Recording in progress.
Good evening. Welcome to the Housing Commission's January 7th, 2024 regular Housing Commission meeting. 2025 regular Housing Commission meeting.
And just to clarify, it's a special meeting. But sorry.
Yeah, it is a special meeting. Let's start again.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Housing Commission's January 7th, 2025 special Housing Commission meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with Housing Commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating in the Oak Conference Room via Zoom. I'm Chair Merriman, and I'll call the meeting to order at 6:36 p.m. I'd like to introduce staff and Housing Commission members present. We have Housing Manager Tim Wong and Management Analyst Ariana Milton. Happy New Year. Nice to see you. And for our roll call, we have Commissioner Beely present, Commissioner Leach here, Chair Merriman, I'm here, Commissioner Onap. Here's absent, Commissioner Portillo. Hello, Commissioner Switzer.
Here.
And Vice Chair Trump.
Here.
Tim, would you please provide instructions to the Housing Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Okay, thank you, Chair Merriman and members of the Housing Commission. Welcome everyone to the January 7th special meeting of the Housing Commission, and thank you for attending. Staff will engage cameras and microphones to make presentations and respond to the members of the Housing Commission. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment on an item on tonight's agenda, after the chair calls for public comment on the item you wish to speak on. For virtual participants, please engage the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. And for those who are calling in from a landline or cell phone, please press *9. For those in person, please complete a speaker card and bring them to my desk. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tim. For item C, our regular business. Under regular business, the Housing Commission receives informational presentations in addition to considering policy matters and administrative actions. First, we have item C1 to approve the Housing Commission meeting minutes from December 4th. It's open for public comment.
We do not have any public comments at this time.
Thank you. It is open for discussion and questions, if any. Seeing none, do I have a motion and second?
Move to approve the housing commission meetings from December 4th.
A second.
Who was the second one? Okay, so it looks like we have a motion by Commissioner Leach and a second by Commissioner Switzer to approve the housing commission meeting minutes for December 4th, 2024. I will now do a roll call vote. Commissioner Beely? Aye. Commissioner Leach? Aye. Chair Merriman?
Yes.
Commissioner Knapp is absent. Commissioner Portillo? Virginia. Yes, and Commissioner.
Oh, sorry, yes.
It's okay.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Switzer
Yes.
and Vice Chair Trump.
Here, yes.
It's a new year.
The motion passes.
Excellent. I am going to recuse myself on the next item and ask Vice Chair Tremont to move us forward and would ask staff to get me. And you're complete. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, yeah, so next we have item C2, to review and make a recommendation on the proposed modifications to the below market rate housing guidelines and below market rate housing agreement with Habitat for Humanity Greater San Francisco for the proposed housing development located at 335 Pierce Road. Housing manager Tim Wong will now introduce the item. This is now open for public comment. Ariana, oh, sorry.
I'll do the presentation
Yeah.
first. So I have a quick PowerPoint. If you could bring that up. So as the chair mentioned, this meeting is for the Housing Commission, next slide, to consider modifications to the city's BMR guidelines. And also for the Housing Commission to consider the BMR agreement that will be in place with the modifications for this particular project at 335 Pierce Road. Next slide. So some quick background. In April of 2024, the city council approved a commitment of 3.6 million to purchase the property at 335 Pierce Road. This project is sponsored by Habitat for Humanity, and MidPen is the current owner of the parcel. MidPen had some original ideas to do ownership housing, but for whatever reason, did not come to fruition. So Habitat is now taking the ball and running with it. And Habitat plans to do low-income ownership housing. And right now, there is not a submitted development application for the project, but it's envisioned that it'll be 8 units of 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or
Yeah, we 2 bedroom and 3 bedrooms.
yeah. And the actual development application is still being prepared and put together. But this is an opportunity to acquire this site at this time. Similar to a previous project that Habitat is sponsoring at 123 Constitution. At that, they also requested modifications to the BMR guidelines. And next slide. The reason for the modifications is that in the city, we have what is known as an inclusionary requirement that every residential development has to provide a certain percentage of affordable housing. And in this instance, assuming it's an 8-unit project, the project would need to provide 10%, or in this instance, 1 unit as affordable, even though it isn't 100% affordable. The city still requires this inclusionary requirement. And therefore, the modifications that they are requesting would apply for this 1 unit. And the reason for the modifications is that the city BMR guidelines are slightly different than Habitat's administrative process. And by requesting these modifications, it will allow for the consistent and uniform application of Habitat guidelines or requirements to the project, instead of having to administer one with city requirements and the remaining 7, or the remaining remaining units to be done the Habitat way. And just also to clarify, the city approval process, BMR modifications are reviewed by the city council. And so we will be taking these modifications and a funding agreement to the city council at the January 28th meeting. And in another nuance, if you will, the BMR agreement will be reviewed by the Planning Commission, since they will be the body that will be reviewing the development application. And how the mental part process goes, the approving authority, if you will, always reviews the BMR agreement, but funding agreements go, funding agreements go to council. And at this point, since there's no development application, The BMR agreement will, is not scheduled to be reviewed by the planning commission until the development application is submitted, reviewed, and scheduled. So, but staff is having the, Housing Commission review the BMR agreement now while it's fresh, instead of bringing it back in probably the fall. So trying to make things a little more efficient, so to speak. Next slide. So again, the requested modifications are for consistency of administration for the entire development. And just to let you know, and this is kind of a higher level slide to summarize the modifications, in that the modifications are a different approach, but basically it leads to the same conclusion. Maybe the city's BMR requirements are slightly different than Habitat's. For example, the city requires a 3% down payment, while the Habitat program does not require a down payment. In addition, they offer 0% loans, while for the BMR guidelines, it's always through a market rate lender. So they would have to put down 3% and also get a loan with Bank of America, Wells Fargo, some other market rate lender. So that is one modification that has been requested. Another one is how the city calculates household income slightly different than Habitat. And again, it's all, the purpose and intent are similar, but it's just different approaches. And that's just a high level summary of these modifications. Staff, along with the Habitat for Humanity representative, is happy to answer any specific questions you may have about a particular modification, but just wanted to give you a higher level overview. And then in addition, as previously mentioned, it's consistent with the requests made for the 123 Constitution project, which the council and I think the Housing Commission reviewed a couple of years ago. So, but going through the modifications for this particular project. Next slide. In terms of next steps, as mentioned, we'll be taking the $3.6 million funding agreement and the requested BMR modifications as recommended by the Housing Commission to the council on January 28th. And during that time, on April, roughly around April, Habitat will be submitting a development application to develop the property at 335 Pierce. And yeah, roughly in fall of 2025 will be the planning commission consideration of the development application and also the accompanying BMR agreement. And so, yeah, part of this is to avoid having to bring back the BMR agreement in the fall of 2020. In the fall of this year. It's already 2025.
I know.
keep on forgetting. Pardon me. So those are the next steps. Next slide. So again, this is the recommendation from the staff report to consider the BMR modifications and to make a recommendation to council about those modifications, and also to review and make a recommendation to the planning commission about the BMR housing agreement with Habitat for the proposed project. That concludes staff's presentation. Would like to introduce Sydney Stone of Habitat for Humanity, and staff for Sydney are here and happy to answer any questions that the Housing Commission may have.
Okay, so I guess first, this item is now open for public public comment. Ariana, do we have any public comments?
We do not have any public comments at this time.
Okay, so no public comments. So this item is open for Housing Commission clarifying questions or discussion? I guess,
Is this like a list of the modifications?
Yes. Each modification request has been outlined with an explanation and given staff's recommendation to the modification, but basically staff supports all the requested modifications. But if you have any questions about a specific modification, be happy to go into detail to explain further about this.
I just have a question. First of all, thank you for coming in. I love what Habitat for Humanity does. I think it's a great good. It sounds like, so what, one of the modifications is that Habitat for Humanity provides the loans directly.
Yeah, so, this is myself, Sydney Stone, I'm Vice President of Real Estate Development. Our affiliate is one of the affiliates that actually does lending. So we do lend to all of our homeowners. And as Tim mentioned, it's 0% down, 0% interest. So we get to the same conclusion, again, as Tim said, that the city's BMR program does from the standpoint of the residents won't pay more than 30% of their income on their housing costs. We get there by doing a fair market value on the home, and then we subsidize it heavily with the 0% down, 0 interest. We'll also be applying for Cal Home as well, and then private donations and things like that. The sweat equity that the homeowner puts into it brings what their mortgage would be down to the same as it would be under the or similar to what it would be under the BMR program.
Okay.
oh, okay, I was gonna say, well, first, I'm excited to see this project go in the hands of Habitat for Humanity as well. So my understanding is, does Habitat have land control yet? Or,
We are actually finishing up the PSA, right, the purchase and sell agreement with Midpin. We expect that signed actually probably before the city council meeting on the 28th.
okay,
And we hope to close this transaction end of March, sometime in April.
okay, and do we need, does council need to approve any of the funding before? Or like before the land control or anything, or?
No, well, other jurisdictions in the city in the past has approved acquisition loans. And so this is similar to providing acquisition for site control for the Cal Home funding to provide. It just helps to have site control.
Yeah.
And so this will help Habitat control the site, plus pay for some additional pre-development costs in the development of this project. So as Sydney mentioned, that the PSA will be executed prior to the council meeting, so they will have site control. And then this will help secure the deed, right, for the project.
Yeah, it's gonna really kind of speed this up. So this will be a kind of a fast project. So we've already started design on it. We'll finish up the site control within the next couple of months. We will go for the Cal Home funds, also in like February. All that could be finalized, probably around the time that planning commission reviews the BMRs. Depending on how fast the city goes with entitlements and permitting, we hope to be under construction sometime next year.
Great. So I hope we can get that moving forward.
Thank you, Sydney, for sharing. I just have a clarifying question, Tim. The 3% is what you guys are asking, because usually Habitat has a 0%, but you guys are saying, no, let's go ahead and we need to do the 3%, is that?
No, we typically, thank you for the question. No, typically the city in our BMR program requires that they submit, or they are required to provide at least a 3% down payment. But to be consistent with the Habitat program, they have requested a modification for 0%. And so the city or staff recommends support for that modification. So we are not asking, the city is not asking for a 3%
Got it.
for
Thank you.
this project.
Thank you. And then Sydney, one question for you, the sweat equity that you guys are requesting from the homeowner. Since it's a new development, how is that gonna work? Because I'm not sure how they would. Are they gonna?
That's a great question. Yes, on a, 2-3 story townhomes, which this will be. The sweat equity is not as extensive as it would be on some other developments, or it's not as available, right? So we would be looking at any interior finishing, landscaping, things like that for them to do their sweat equity, as well as all the homeownership education. That's also part of the sweat equity too, is we provide homeownership education, financing education, so that they're, the homeowners are ready to go as soon as they get into the home. So
Awesome. Thank you very much.
that's a great question. We are thinking about that all the time, is volunteer engagement, as we do new developments like this, how we can get them to, provide us what equity in this.
And would this be like a separate lottery system through Habitat for Humanity, or use the city's, I think I'm seeing in this section, it would use the city's legacy?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a hybrid in that we know the city has a BMR interest list. So we have committed to fully utilizing that interest list, and they will have preference in the lottery. I believe that's what we finalized, Tim. I know council was looking at that too.
Yeah, typically with the city's BMR program, for ownership units, the city has a legacy list in which the city council said, as of 2020, the waiting list becomes this legacy list, and everyone on this legacy list gets first shot at BMR units. Basically, we're closing the waiting list. We're gonna go through the legacy list. And so for the Habitat, they're also utilizing the legacy list. And if for some reason the legacy list does not yield all the owners, then the second preference is the city's live work preference. In addition to, in the BMR guidelines, under preferences, there's live, there's work, and there's also disabled if you have a disability, and then lastly, if you've been displaced. And so that's the second tier priority, legacy list, city live work preferences. And then lastly, the general public will have opportunity.
And we'll have 1 or 2 units that'll be mobility designed as well. So
Great.
I have a question, Tim, a follow-up question on the legacy list. I think that we were talking last year in regards to updating the way that list was kind of being combed or organized. I don't know, I never heard back if you guys had gotten to a vendor that was gonna kind of mitigate or help in organizing how that list is being kept or updated.
Great segue. We are looking into, per the BMR guidelines, by January 31st, the city can issue a letter to all the applicants on the legacy list for them to update, to confirm that they're still interested. And if they don't respond within 30 days, they can be removed from the legacy list. Informally, I call it the culling of the legacy list. And so staff will start, we're hoping to do that this January. So we've started the process to help to update the legacy list.
How are you guys doing that communication? Like postcard, email, how?
Both, because on the legacy list, they have an email address, they have a backup email address, they have their physical address. So we'll be contacting them however they have provided their information, but there'll be multiple contacts. I know the guidelines say 30 days, but we'll give them multiple opportunities to respond, not just within 30 days. If they don't, we'll probably follow up with them again, at least 3 times. We call it 3 strikes and you're out. So.
Follow-up question, I'm so sorry. Tim, now when we're talking about home ownership, are we going to be opening that up to underserved communities like the Bellhaven area and communicating, hey, Habitat is gonna have these BMRs, you're welcome to apply. Is that gonna be open in that format or no?
Well, the first priority, as mentioned, is the legacy list, and that is from the council. The council in 2020, 2021 said something like, we're gonna stick with the legacy list. When it comes to BMR home ownership, if we don't get enough applicants or home buyers from that, then the second is the city's preference, which does include persons who potentially were, not potentially, who were displaced from the Bellhaven area. They will get that second priority. And that's what is in the BMR guidelines right now. And so if and it's also council's prerogative if they want to add additional, but that is what staff has negotiated with Habitat at this moment. Yeah, things could change January 28th, but this is what we have in place at this moment.
Thank you.
We will start shortly our community engagement in Bellhaven, so that we can make sure that this development is as widely publicized as possible, and that we can design it with the community in mind as well. So,
Thank you.
I don't believe I have any questions, but maybe a few comments. I particularly like the guideline section, like 5.5 with the expansion of the deed restriction for that. What's normally required for a 55-year period to the 99-year period. I think that was pleased to see that. And I definitely would concur with staff's determination and the staff report for the other deviations, if you will, for the guideline sections. And I think, this would provide you an opportunity for some continuity on the management of this property. So I think that's it for my comments.
All right, so do I have a motion and a second for the stated motion?
You have my second.
Somebody has to make the initial motion.
Also, just to, and we do, you need a recommendation as part of this, according to the living here.
Yes, they can, if the commission accepts staff's recommendation, you can read the recommendation verbatim as the motion if you choose to do so.
So recommend approval of modification to the below market rate housing guidelines and the below market rate housing agreement with Habitat for Humanity Greater San Francisco for the proposed housing development located at 335 Pierce Road. Do I have a motion and a second for the stated motion?
You have my,
Aye. So second.
Second. Who was first, who was second?
Yeah, I'll be second.
Okay.
You're first.
Gotcha. I thirded, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was motioned, it was seconded.
It's been
collectively.
so.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Portillo and a second by Vice Chair Trump to recommend approval of modifications to the below market rate housing guidelines and the below market rate housing agreement and Habitat for Humanity's Greater San Francisco for the approved housing and development located at 335 Pierce Road. Okay, I will make a roll call vote now. Commissioner Beely,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach. Chair Merriman is recused. Commissioner O'Nap is absent. Commissioner Portillo,
yes.
Commissioner Switzer,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Sharma.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. And with that, I'll go grab Chair Merriman so we can continue.
and thank you, the commission. We are super excited about this project and all with Menlo Park, so thank you.
We're excited.
We're really very happy.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Summerhill, Summerhill development. Yeah.
Is it with Habitat as well?
No, it's not with Habitat. That was a project I worked on, but I think they 7 BMR units out of 48 total. It's a development in South Palo Alto. Yeah.
Nice. Cause you were at Palo Alto, that's how you know.
Yes, so, yeah. He provides me all the latest stuff.
Oh, you have all of
And we're on the air, so.
Publicly available.
Yeah.
For the record.
Okay, now that the item is done, I am back. Housing advocate, and we are on to reports and announcements. Item D1 is commissioner updates. Do we have any individual commissioner updates? Right. Item D2 is our opportunity to suggest future agenda items. You have future agenda items?
I do have one, so I have been hearing that, I'm sorry, let me gather my thoughts. So there is a organization called Haven Energy, and they actually have funding by the government to actually provide, solar panels for homes and also the batteries for the home, but you have to apply. They're not widely known. I came across their organization because I was looking for solar panels, and Grid Alternatives actually was working with with Menlo Park at one point, but now they're not. But Haven Energy actually does have funding. They're applying for it, so they need to actually have, and they're serving underserved communities, in case you guys know anyone, and they have a grid which, you can apply and they'll check if you don't have to pay or you pay a certain amount. So I thought it was just a great organization that's available, and I don't think it's known in this area or in the city. So I asked him if I can pass the word around, and he said, yeah. So I actually applied, and they were able to provide, they're going to be able to provide within about 3-6 months, depending on the funding and when it's approved and all that, because it's in the queue on their end with the government. It's gonna be free, so it just, when you apply, they kind of go based on your income and all that stuff. So just wanted to voice it out for, for anyone that's interested, or if you know anyone.
Thank you. That reminds me, there's a whole category of benefits for Menlo Park residents who it can be a homeowner, but things like subsidies to change your landscaping so that it is using less water, and other subsidies related to basically getting gas out of the buildings, getting out of our homes, usually hot water heaters and other things. So I think a lot of opportunity to connect with other commissions, and perhaps staff can share at a future date the things that may happen at the other commission that really relate to housing. With the goal of making it more accessible, the information more accessible to other members of Menlo Park, how we can kind of connect the dots there, so. Staff's amenable to that, I think that would be helpful.
If I may, just along those lines, the city provided 1.2 million in a rehab program, or it's still going on with Habitat for Humanity in the Belhaven area. And as part of that, the city also received a grant to do just energy efficiency with Peninsula Clean Energy. And I don't think, but we can ask the city staff liaison, who does Rachel, to give a presentation about what that offers to the commission, because coupled with the rehab program, Habitat is promoting the PCE program, where I think it's, yeah, energy efficient appliances, maybe heat pumps. I don't know what the full spectrum of assistance, but Rachel can certainly provide that. And that was in conjunction, I believe, with the EQC, the environmental quality. So along those lines, there has already been some communication or relationship with other commissions. But the chair brings up a good point. There could be greater coordination. It's just one to highlight
The efforts, yeah.
what's happening at this point, what's in existence.
May I add to what you're mentioning, because I think when I was volunteering for El Concilio and trying to get air conditioner heat pumps for underserved communities, I went around the Bellhaven area on the apartment complex towards the freeway section. And most of those developments, apartment developments, are actually owned by realtors. And a lot of those apartments, upon speaking with the residents, they were living under apartments that didn't have heat, apartments that didn't have updated electrical equipment. And I was concerned because you really can't, and I did try to actually speak to a realtor, and he was not interested in updating anything. But I don't know if maybe we can look into maybe some policies that maybe, I don't know, realtors need to follow in order to update those apartments that are on the side of the freeway in the Bellhaven area. Those need a lot of attention. And I know because that's the area that I actually was volunteering with El Concilio and providing heat pumps for underserved communities. And that's how I actually started speaking with some of the residents. And, yeah.
Maybe we can have a further discussion offline, just
Yeah.
to talk more with Rachel to get greater details about what that program encompasses or the requirements, but we can talk offline about that. So.
Thank you.
In terms of other agenda items, is there a plan, from staff's perspective to bring back an item to the commission about housing element implementation? It's such a massive work product, and really the planning is great, but the taking steps to see progress on it is really where the big work lies.
That is scheduled for March as part of the annual performance report. The State Housing and Community Development Department requires an annual report about the implementation, their performance report in terms of how many units are developed, housing units, what the city's progress is towards its housing element. So that is coming to the commission in March. So you'll get a report about what the status of every program and how many units, how many ADUs have been built, just the full gamut, because it seems like annually HCD is requiring more information as part of the annual performance report, such as how many SB9 is where it allows you to subdivide a single family development parcel. How many SB9 applications have come in? How many units have you produced? How many ADUs at what income level? It's becoming a very comprehensive report. And that is coming to the commission in March. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I assume the laws that were passed last year that require cities to now report on extremely low income units and acutely low income units, I assume that will be part of it.
I don't know if that'll be, because this annual performance report is for the 2024 year, and the new income categories became effective January 1st of 2025.
Okay, so there's a lag in that.
There will be a lag, but that will be folded in next, the March of 2026 annual report or the presentation from staff. I would be surprised if it was not included as part of the annual performance report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other suggestions or areas that we want to talk about?
Well, I'll just launch into staff updates and announcements. As mentioned, you know, the new income levels are part of a slew of housing legislation that became effective as of January 1st. And so for February, just to let the Housing Commission know, February, it appears that we'll have another BMR agreement for Housing Commission review. In addition, staff will give a high-level summary of those significant housing legislation that became active or effective in 2025. I don't know how many, but there were a slew of new laws that impact housing production. Yeah, it's the entire gamut. So staff will be giving a summary of some of the more significant ones. And in addition to that, just wanted to point out, January 14th, the council will be hearing about the redevelopment of parking lots and the RFQ. And so I'm sure you've been seeing a lot of ink or attention given to this subject. So just wanted to let you know that January 14th is the meeting date for that. In addition, in March, in addition to the APR, potentially we could have another, it hasn't been firmly scheduled, but depending on the discussion in January, the Park Line BMR agreement could be reviewed by the commission, depending on what type of feedback is received by the council in January. So those are some potential items that the Housing Commission could be reviewing and considering over the next few months. Also, in addition, a couple other things. May is Affordable Housing Month. And again, if just planting that seed for the Housing Commission, if you have any ideas how you would like to do outreach as per your annual work plan, if there's anything that you would be interested in as part of outreach. And just again, I know there was one in October, but there have been periodic times in the BHCC, the Belhaven Community Center, where there's the opportunity to have a table to share information about housing, what have you, to help fulfill the outreach portion of the work plan. And so just if you could start thinking about ideas for Affordable Housing Month, I think that dovetails perfectly with the commission's work plan in terms of outreach. Last year, we had the Affordable Housing Fair in Belhaven. And so this year, maybe looking to do something different. And lastly, because of under the umbrella of sustainability, the next few months, we may have some fairly large reports. And so staff encourages the commission to bring their laptops for the staff reports. We will still print them out if a commissioner requests that they be printed out, but start moving towards maybe more electronic copy. I see a number of you, some of you already have your laptops, so that's great. But yeah, just trying to save a little paper
Makes
and
sense.
seeing how we might have larger reports in the next few meetings. So just to encourage commissioners to bring their laptops. And other than that, that concludes staff updates.
I did have a question. Is there a time that you want us to, as a commission, send any ideas by to staff for the outreach?
Yeah, I think by April, the sooner the better to start planning, depending if, for example, the Housing Commission wants to do something at the BHCC. Because the BHCC is so popular right now, so high profile, to even get a time for a room, for example, it could be problematic. So the sooner you know, the sooner the commission knows, the better. Yeah. So, that concludes staff updates.
Excellent. Okay, well, for our first meeting of the year, we can adjourn. It is 7:22 PM. Thank you very much, everybody. See you next time.
All right, thank you all.